Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Swannanoa Valley. It's Sunday, November the 22nd, and we're coming to you via Facebook and YouTube at 10:45 a.m. You can find that link in your email that you get from Evan or in the weekly current newsletter. If you aren't on our mailing list, you can get in touch with our office and let our office manager know that you'd like to be on the mailing list, and then you'll receive those links. So the congregation is still pretty busy and active in spite of the pandemic, and there are quite a number of announcements that let you know the things that are going on in your community in the current every week. So make sure that you read and then join the things that you feel are appropriate for you. Whatever your level of involvement is, however often you've been here, we are really glad you're here. And we hope that you'll join us after the service for our virtual Zoom coffee hour. It's a chance to talk about what we've just participated in the service, ask questions, and just generally get a little bit of contact with each other during this time when we have to be socially distanced. I think coming up on a holiday as we are, where we have to be more distance than we're used to being on holidays, especially, this might be a good time to join the things that you can on Zoom and reach out to your friends and family virtually. So, we're ready now to start our service. Let the service begin.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Gavin. I am one of the Sunday Service Associates here for this congregation. Sunday Service Associates are responsible for lining up the speakers for when our Reverend Michael Carter is not in the pulpit. And we have a wonderful speaker for you today. You will hear more about her later in our service. As Larry prepares to light our chalice, consider this. Although we cannot gather in person on this day, the chalice is a reminder of the light that burns within each of us. My light reaches out to you as your lights reach across the distance to me. When my light flickers, begins to dim, your light will rekindle me, as my light will rekindle you during the times that you are in shadow. This chalice is a symbol of our community and our shared commitment to care for one another, to love one another. Over the distance, may we keep the flame of our community burning bright.
This is hymn number 355, We Lift Our Hearts in Thanks.
In honor of our Native American brothers and sisters, our first reading is a Wampanoag Prayer of Thanksgiving, written by Slow Turtle. Great Spirit, I thank you today. I thank you for Mother Earth. I thank you for Grandmother Moon. I thank you for Grandfather Sun. I thank you for the four directions, the east, the south, the west, the north. I thank you for all my relations, the winged nation, the creeping and crawling nation, the four-legged nation, the green and growing nation, and all things living in the water, honoring the clans, the deer, the bear, the wolf, the turtle, the snipe. Great Spirit, I thank you today. This is a time in our service when we share our joys and sorrows, recognizing that the Thanksgiving holiday will look very different for many of us as we are asked to care for one another by not gathering in groups outside our immediate household. The people who receive our weekly current were asked to share how Thanksgiving will be different for them this year. This is your time to share.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Shorkey, and my joy is that I'm so happy to be able to team up with Evan Yannick to produce these Sunday services. Thank you, Evan. We love you. And with regards to Thanksgiving, Bill Abul said, no way can I step back and not host this year. And so we figured out a way to set the food up on the porch and to only have 4 friends come over and eat outside. And if the weather's not good enough for that, well, we'll just pack up our plates and go home and we'll Zoom together. So anyway, hope everybody's got some alternative plans to celebrate friendship for Thanksgiving.
My name is Cara Dillo, and I am Evan's wife. And my joy this week is that my baby brother turned 34, and he lives in Durham, and we drove to Durham to see him last weekend and to also see his new house that he's been in for a year and a half that I've never seen. And while we were down there, we also saw my other brother and his wife, who I haven't seen since Christmas because of COVID, and also saw Evan's brother and his wife, who we have not seen much because of COVID. So lots of joy, lots of family, lots of social distancing, but we are also quarantining ourselves now because we traveled. We're all well, so that's another joy. We all still feel well and are still hopefully healthy.
We thank you for those who shared your joys and your concerns. We recognize that Thanksgiving will be difficult for many families. And for some of us, perhaps it will be a blessing as we have the freedom to change our tradition. But we lift up your joys, your concerns. Know that you are in our hearts. Thank you. And now the time for our offertory. You may donate online by going to our website or our Facebook page. You may mail in an offering. Or for those of you who live locally, we have a secure drop box at the entrance to our church. Although we are not able to meet in person during this time, we still have our wonderful building here that we will be meeting in again sometime in the future. And we still have our staff, so you are encouraged to give as you feel so able. Our second reading is number 597 in our hymnal, Love versus Hate by Dhammapada. Never does hatred cease by hating in return. Only through love can hatred come to an end. Victory breeds hatred. The conquered dwell in sorrow and resentment. They who give up all thought of victory or defeat may be calm and live happily at peace. Let us overcome violence by gentleness. Let us overcome evil by good. Let us overcome the miserly by liberality. Let us overcome the liar by truth. May it be so. Now Larry Perlman has a meditation to share.
Thank you, Nancy. I think following that reading perfect meditation is the prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Now, we'll take a few moments, as is our wont, in silence. Make yourself comfortable and just spend a bit of time in quiet. Thank you. Our next hymn is number 351, A Long, Long Way the Sea Winds Blow.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Becky Stone. Becky is a native Philadelphian who moved to the mountains 40 years ago with her husband to start their family. With a background in theater, reading stories to their 4 children came quite easily. A librarian heard her reading to her children and asked Becky to volunteer to tell stories at Pack Library. Becky said yes, and a storyteller was born. Becky has told at schools, libraries, universities, churches, festivals, and private events in the region for over 30 years. Becky, Janet Oliver, and the late Rocky Fulp worked together as Thrice-Told Storytellers, a group that specialized in African American history and stories. She has appeared with Asheville Community Theater, SART, Asheville Contemporary Dance Theater, HART, Montford Players, and in plays in Greenville, South Carolina, and Lexington, Virginia. Her storytelling skills have served her well, as since 2003 she has portrayed Pauli Murray, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and Maya Angelo in Asheville, Greenville, Spartanburg, Colorado, Nebraska, and Ohio. Now, a true confession here, I have not heard Becky tell a story. I have that pleasure today along with you. Now, Becky has told here at this congregation on 2 previous occasions, and I heard excellent reviews, but that was before my time with this congregation. But I feel like I've known Becky for at least 25 years, because when I was still living in Maryland, I subscribed to this nice little publication called Green Prints, which is a gardening magazine, a quarterly, with wonderful stories and poetry for those of us who love gardening. And this nice little magazine is produced by Becky and her husband Pat and their children. And over the years, I watched the Stone family grow up in the print of Green Prints. They shared their weddings, the births of Becky and Pat's grandchildren, and I feel like I know this family through the pages of Green Prints. So I have invited Larry to talk about his experience working with Becky as a storyteller. I know her as a gardener. Larry knows her as a storyteller.
a couple of years ago when the first time that I ever told publicly was in Hendersonville. And they had certain featured speakers there, but then they had an opportunity for those of us who weren't featured speakers to tell 5-minute stories. And whoever was judged to have told the best 5-minute story out of that group would then get to tell again in the afternoon with the featured speakers. And I thought, I can do this. I can be really good. I can be the best there. And I walked in and I saw among the 10 people who were in our group, Becky Stone. And as soon as I saw her, I said, I am not winning this contest. And of course she did. Becky is amazing. I had seen her tell before, so I knew I was out of my league. Anyway, if you have ever heard Becky tell either at Chautauqua or anywhere, then you know she's amazing. For me, I'll just say, she can make me cry. She can make me laugh, that's for sure. She can make me think really deeply, and she can make me go into my heart. She is an incredible talent, but more than that, Becky is a really warm, caring person, and she is as down to earth as you can get. If you're thinking that performers are divas, you're not thinking about Becky Stone. So it's my pleasure to introduce her to speak here, because I know you are all going to love her. Becky?
Well, I want to thank Nancy and Larry for such warm and glowing introduction remarks. I really appreciate that. And I only hope I can live up to these expectations. But, I've just recently had the chance to work with Nancy, and I've known Larry, and we've traveled and told together for the past few years. So I'm enjoying these relationships, and I'm enjoying the chance to get to tell stories again. I was very busy and had a very busy year planned when COVID hit, and of course the chances to tell stories have been rare. The stories that Nancy and I looked over and ended up choosing for today are both from this book. And I highly recommend this book for anyone who wants to tell. Ready to Tell Tales, edited by David Holt and Bill Mooney. And I ran into David at that very same storytelling festival in Hendersonville. And I said, I'm going to be telling the story you contributed to this book from Ready to Tell Tales. And he said, oh, which volume? So obviously there are other volumes of this, and I just hope they're as good as this one has proven to be for me. I think I've told about 10 stories from that book. Both of these stories are African tales. The first was contributed, I should let you know that all of these stories in here are contributed by various storytellers. And the first story I'm going to share was contributed by Margaret Reed McDonald, and it is from the Limba people, Limba, in Africa. The animals decided to have a contest to find out who was the strongest of the animals. It was Elephant's idea. So they agreed to gather on Wednesday. And by the time Wednesday rolled around, they had 6 participants. The first to arrive was Chimpanzee. Look at these arms. Wait till they see my strength. The next to arrive was Deer. Look at these legs. Wait until they see my strength. The next to arrive was Leopard. Look at these claws. Wait till they see my strength. Soon to follow came Bushbuck, with long, pointy horns. Wait till they see my strength. Just look at these horns. Soon to follow was Elephant. Elephant came in slowly, confidently, and thinking to herself, elephant means strength. And she sat down, and they waited, and waited, and waited. Then man came bounding into the circle. I'm here, I'm here, you can begin. Well, who shall go first? Chimpanzee went first. Chimpanzee climbed a tree to the very top, and then took the top of the tree, twisted it around itself, and tied it into a knot. And then he came down. There, he said, wasn't that strength? Yes, cheered all the animals. Strength, 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 strength. Very well, chimpanzee. Sit down. Chimpanzee sat down. Next came Deer. She came into the circle, ran 3 miles out into the forest and 3 miles back, and was not even out of breath. Not the least little teeniest bit. There. Wasn't that strength? Yes, cheered the animals. Strength, 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 strength. Very good, dear. Sit down. Next came Leopard. Leopard walked into the center of the gathering space, released his claws, and scraped at the hard dirt, flinging it over his shoulders. The animals backed up. They were frightened. There, said Leopard. Wasn't that strength? Yes, cried the animals. Strength, 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 strength. Very good, Leopard. Sit down. Next, Bushbuck strode into the circle, walked to the edge of the cane field, lowered his head, took his horns, and plowed the earth completely to the other end of the cane field, a path as wide as a roadway, turned around, and using his horns, plowed his way back to the circle. There, said Bushbuck, cleaning his horns. Wasn't that strength? Yes, cried the animals. Strength, 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 strength. Thank you, Bushbuck. You may sit down. Then Elephant stepped into the circle and crossed over to a grove, a small stand of huge trees. She lowered her shoulder and pushed and pushed. And then all of those trees fell over. There, said Elephant, isn't that strength? Yes, cried the animals. Strength, 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 strength. Very good. Sit down, elephant. And then man came into the circle, twirling about. He did somersaults, he did cartwheels, he did handsprings, and then he said, "There, wasn't that strength?" Well, I don't know. Do you think that was strength? That was very exciting, but I'm not sure that would be strength. Is there anything else you can do? Man was insulted. He spotted a palm tree. He went over to that palm tree and climbed up so fast, grabbed the palm nuts and threw them down to the ground, and then came down the tree so fast. "There," he said, "wasn't that strength?" Oh, well, it was most impressive and very entertaining, but I don't think that was strength. Man was angry. He left the circle and went behind a bush and pulled out a rifle that he had brought to the contest and hidden there, which was why he was late in the first place. And he brought that rifle into the circle, and he leveled it at Elephant and pulled the trigger. And Elephant fell over, dead. "There," said man, "wasn't that?" The animals were gone. Strength? There was no one there to watch him boast. Man was alone. The animals had fled into the forest and gathered there. Did you see that? What was that? Did you think that was strength? No, that was not strength. That was death. That was death. And since that day, no animal will walk with man. When man comes into the forest, he walks alone. But the animals still talk about man. Man, that creature, man, the one who can't tell the difference between strength and death. That's called Strength from the Limbo People. Thank you for listening to that one. Oh, and thank you, my listeners, for the applause. This next story has a different feel to it, and it was contributed to this book by Len Cabral, or it might be pronounced Cabral, but it's C-A-B-R-A-L, Len Cabral, and this story is from the people of East Africa, and it is called The Lion's Whisker. There was a boy who was about 10 years old when his mother died. He was sad that his mother died. He was angry that his mother died. He was confused about her death. About a year later, his father remarried a woman named Sonia who came from the highlands. And the boy was still sad that his mother had died. He was still angry about his mother's death and confused about his mother's death. And now he was threatened. He was afraid that his father would not love him anymore. All of his love would go to this woman, Sonia. Her very presence was a threat. But the woman loved the boy. She did everything she could to show him her love. She made him beautiful clothes. And the instant he put them on, he would go out into the briars and shred them to bits. She would prepare lovely meals for him, and he would not take a bite. She loved him so much, and all she wanted was her love to be returned by him. One day, the father went out hunting, and Sonia saw this as an opportunity to talk to her stepson about their feelings for each other. The boy was sitting alone on his bed in his room, and he had a feeling that Sonia was going to talk about their feelings. But he was sad. He was angry. He was confused. And he was threatened. He did not want to talk about his feelings. Sonia came into his room and said, "Son, I want to talk about our feelings for each other." He did not even let her finish. "I hate you," he said. "You are not my mother. I will never love you. I'm going to run away." And he ran away. Sonia was crushed. She cried and cried all afternoon. And finally, her husband came home and she said, "My darling, I'm afraid our son has run away." "I will find him." Her husband left and went to the place by the river where children love to gather. And there was his son throwing rocks into the river. He was not finding flat rocks and then skipping them across the surface of the water. He was picking up just big, chunky, heavy bits of rock and heaving them as far as he could to the center and the deepest part of the river. His father came up to him, put a hand on his shoulder. The boy turned. They sat on a log all the rest of that day, talking, long, long talks. And then they walked home arm in arm, where Sonia had prepared a meal, and they partook of the meal. And then after the meal, they went off to their separate rooms, except for Sonia. She went directly to the witch doctor's house. The witch doctor was a healer. He was a wise man in the village. He knew their hearts. He understood their minds. And when Sonia got there, she said, "Witch doctor, give me a love potion. I need a love potion for my stepson. I love him so much, and I need him to return that love to me, but he will not. I need a love potion." And the witch doctor looked at her and said, "First, you must bring me the whisker of a furious mountain lion." "Come again?" "You must bring me the whisker of a furious mountain lion." "How can I do that?" "Use your wits." And the witch doctor turned and left. Sonia went home thinking, stayed up all night thinking, but early the next morning, she got a sack and filled it with 4 big chunks of raw meat. And then she crossed through the village out through the fields, the countryside, the highlands, the mountains, till she was climbing in the cliffs, and she finally found the opening of a cave. Surely, there must be a mountain lion in that cave. She reached into the sack and set a chunk of meat just outside of the mouth of the cave. And then she went back about 100 yards and hid behind a bush and peeked to see if indeed there was a lion in that cave. She did not have to wait too long before a lion stepped out of the cave, smelled the meat, and ate it. When he finished eating it, he turned and went back into the cave. Well, said Sonia, there is a lion. She went forward and took the second piece of meat out and set it in that same spot. And this time she backed up only half that distance, and this time she stood in the open and waited. The lion came out of the cave, saw Sonia there, sniffed the meat, and ate it. Then he turned and went back into the cave. Sonia came forward, pulled out the third piece of meat, set it on that same spot, and this time backed up 20 yards and stood there. She knew that in the darkness just beyond where she could see, the lion had watched her and was waiting. She was frightened. She was shaking inside, but she knew that she could not show that fear. She stilled her heart and calmed herself and waited. The lion came out, saw her there, smelled the meat and ate it, and then returned to the cave. Sonia walked back up to the cave and took out the last piece of meat and set it there, stepped back 3 short steps and waited. The lion stepped out, saw her there, smelled the meat and ate it. And while it was eating, Sonia inched forward and extended her hand to the lion's whisker, pulled it out of its face, and it kept eating. She stepped back to the nearest bush, hid behind it for a split second, and then turned and ran all the way down the cliffs, the mountains, the fields, the highlands, into the village. Witch doctor! Witch doctor! I have the whisker of a furious mountain lion! The witch doctor came out. Indeed, this is the whisker of a furious mountain lion. Then give me a love potion. I want my stepson to return his love to me. No, I shall not give you a love potion. But you said! You must approach your stepson the same way you approached this mountain lion. Slowly and patiently. The witch doctor nodded and left her. And Sonia went home and did just that. And in 3 weeks, her stepson smiled at her. And in 7 weeks, he was helping her with her chores. After 10 weeks, they would take long walks together, and he was showing her how to find flat stones and then skip it across the surface of the water at the river. And after 12 weeks, they were best friends. Oh, the boy still loved his mother, always, always. But he found that there was room in his heart to love his stepmother also. The lion's Whisker. And thank you for this chance to tell stories again. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Becky.
Oh, thank you.
That was wonderful. I love that, both of those stories. Now, if we could just tell the difference between strength and death, we could move ahead in this world.
Yeah.
This is hymn number 338, I Seek the Spirit of a Child.
That hymn was beautiful. I seek the spirit of a child. I have had spiritual mentors in my life who have told me to be childlike, not childish. I think mankind as a whole has acted very childish for many, many years. And it's time that we come as little children, innocent and open of heart and open of mind. I have some words I'd like to share from a spiritual mentor of mine, a man named Martin Cecil. This is a poem. Any moment of hating, any moment of lying, any moment of resentment is a moment of dying. Any moment of loving, any moment of giving, any moment of thankfulness is a moment of living. All our moments add together like the digits in a sum. And the answer tells us plainly whether life or death shall come. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
You still have your mask on.
Oh, I do.
I know. Sometimes I forget. You know,
I
I
know.
forget that I have it on, and then I forget that I haven't put it on when I'm talking to people.
Uh,